The Galactic Trade Consortium had ruled the Outer Rim territories for over 8 centuries, their massive enforcement fleets ensuring that every species paid tribute, followed protocols, and never questioned the established order. Their latest target was a small blue-green world in an unremarkable system, a planet whose inhabitants had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and were already causing problems. Admiral HFY of the Hegemony Enforcement Division studied the tactical display with all 4 of his eyes, his chitinous mandibles clicking in what his species considered amusement. The human homeworld hung before them like a ripe fruit, defended by perhaps 40 primitive vessels that barely qualified as warships by galactic standards. "Pathetic," he hissed to his bridge crew, his translator rendering the words in the common tongue. "These mammals think their crude metal boxes can stand against the might of the consortium. Begin the standard intimidation protocol." The message was transmitted on all frequencies, translated into the barbaric human languages. "Attention, primitive species. You will submit to consortium authority immediately. Prepare for taxation assessment and resource extraction. Any resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your world." The response came from a weathered human admiral, whose starred face filled the view screen. Her grey hair was pulled back in a military knot, and her eyes held the kind of cold calculation that came from decades of warfare. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice steady and measured. "You have exactly 30 seconds to leave our system before we consider you a hostile threat requiring immediate response." HFY's laughter echoed through the bridge, a sound like grinding metal. 30 seconds? You face a fleet of 400 vessels, each one capable of reducing your pathetic world to molten slag. "What could you possibly do in 30 seconds, human?" Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. 25 seconds now, Admiral. I'd recommend you start your engines if you value the lives of your crews." "Enough of this farce," HFY snarled, his scales shifting to the deep crimson that indicated extreme agitation among his kind. "All ships, advance to bombardment range. Show these primitives the price of defying the consortium." The massive alien fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their energy shields shimmering like deadly aurora around each vessel. It was a sight that had broken the will of countless species throughout galactic history. The inexorable advance of overwhelming technological superiority. But the human ships didn't retreat or scatter as expected. Instead, they did something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. They simply vanished. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, panic creeping into his voice. "The human vessels, they're gone. No warp signatures, no energy dispersal patterns, no debris fields. They just disappeared." HFY's confidence wavered for the first time in his long military career. "Impossible. No species has developed that level of stealth technology. Scan for cloaked vessels. Check for..." The first explosion tore through his port flank before he could finish the sentence. Then another, and another. The consortium ships were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, couldn't fight back against. "Report!" HFY roared as his flagship shuddered under repeated impacts from weapons that seemed to materialize from empty space. "Unknown weapons fire, sir. The attacks are coming from everywhere. It's like the vacuum of space itself is shooting at us. Our shields are being overwhelmed by some kind of kinetic bombardment, but there's nothing on sensors." What HFY didn't understand, what no alien species in the galaxy had ever conceived, was that humans didn't just build ships. They built systems. While other races focused on individual vessel superiority and traditional fleet formations, humanity had spent decades turning their entire solar system into an integrated defense network. The asteroid belt wasn't just a collection of rocks. It was a minefield of hidden weapons platforms, each one camouflaged to look like natural debris. The moons weren't just satellites. They were fortress bases with enough firepower to level continents, their weapons concealed beneath artificial craters and false geological formations. Even the space debris orbiting Earth had been weaponized, guided by quantum targeting systems that could strike with pinpoint accuracy across impossible distances. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos of the alien bridge. "You wanted to know what we could do in 30 seconds, Admiral. We've been preparing for this moment for over 50 years. Every piece of space junk, every mining station, every communications satellite, every chunk of rock in our system, all of it connected, all of it armed, all of it aimed at anyone stupid enough to threaten our home." The Consortium fleet, once proud and seemingly unstoppable, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that had turned the very fabric of their star system into a weapon. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds were falling to attacks from directions that shouldn't exist, struck by weapons they couldn't detect until the moment of impact. "This is impossible!" Kethvar screamed as another section of his fleet disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. "No species fights like this! You're supposed to meet us in honorable combat! Fleet against fleet!" "Honorable?" Chen's laugh was as cold as the void between stars. "You came here to enslave my people and strip mine our world for resources. You threatened to sterilize billions of innocent lives. Honor went out the airlock the moment you made that threat, Admiral. This is how humans fight. Not with honor, but with everything we have." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 12 minutes. Of the 400 ships that had entered the Sol system with such overwhelming confidence, only 37 limped away, their hulls scarred and their crews traumatized by an encounter with something they had never imagined possible. But the real shock came in the hours that followed. As news of the Consortium's humiliating defeat spread across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Species that had been subjugated for centuries started to stir. The Altarian colonies declared independence. The Centauri Confederacy withdrew from Consortium space. The Outer Rim territories, inspired by humanity's example, began forming their own defensive alliances. The message was spreading like wildfire through the galactic communication networks. The mighty Consortium, conquerors of worlds and subjugators of entire civilizations, had been utterly defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. But more than that, they had encountered something that would haunt the nightmares of every would-be conqueror in the galaxy. A species that didn't just fight to win, but fought to ensure that anyone who threatened them would never want to make that mistake again. Within 6 months, the Galactic Trade Consortium collapsed entirely, as dozens of subjugated species rose in coordinated rebellion. The Outer Rim, once ruled by fear and tribute, became a confederation of free worlds, each one armed with human-designed defense systems and trained in the art of turning their entire star systems into weapons. And at the center of it all sat a small blue planet whose inhabitants had learned the most important lesson in the galaxy. Sometimes the best defense isn't the strongest ship or the biggest gun. It's making sure your enemy never wants to fight you again. The humans had won, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through something far more dangerous: the absolute refusal to accept defeat, combined with the ingenious to turn their entire world into a weapon when threatened. They had shown the galaxy that there was a difference between being peaceful and being harmless. The consortium had learned too late that humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something new, something unprecedented, a species that had survived on a world that tried to kill them every single day and had used that experience to become the most dangerous defenders the galaxy had ever seen. The galaxy would never underestimate Earth again.